Good evening, everyone. We've entitled this presentation, New Codes Confusion. We've been wanting to put this study out for a while. We just haven't had time, but finally we got some time together and put out this presentation to show that when we believe in the new codes, those of us amongst us present true believers, we have to come to the startling fact that it is in direct opposition in many ways to the original codes in regards to the timeline of events, particularly those prior to Ezekiel 9. So we want to go over that carefully tonight and present it to you so that you can see a difference between the two. And then hopefully, we've made some clarity for you and you can see that there really is a preponderance and clear event timeline that we should stick to, not the so-called new codes that were published by Florence, but rather the ones that are original that were published by Brother Houteff. And we know Brother Houteff was inspired, and Florence Houteff was definitely not inspired. In fact, much to the contrary, she was just the same as Judas. She ended up being a betrayer. She left the message, as we know, and ultimately denied Brother Houteff and Ellen White. So she became apostate, and it's so sad when we understand the true history of it. So, but let us begin. We pray. We ask you to do the same, and we'll start that study now. Okay, so this chart here is one that we received a few years ago, and it's from one of the major organizations. And they go ahead and print this out in black and white, and they send it to those that request literature and different material. And so we've kept this in our files for many years. And as I mentioned before, we wanted to break this down and kind of go over it more closely. So that's the goal in this presentation, to look at this really closely and see if this chart holds up. So if you'll take a quick look at this event chart, you'll notice here down in the sections that there is several, and I want to say at least 10, 12 references, all in the 23 events here that pertain as new codes. In other words, new codes are the references they use in a lot of these events. They'll always quote something here, and they'll give for instance, this one's 13 symbolic code. Let's see, 3, 6, page 10, or 3, page 6 to 10, I guess. But anyway, the point is that this chart here that they used is heavenly. Heavenly. I didn't mean to say that. Heavily loaded with new codes. Okay, so we have to understand that this is a new code presentation, basically. Yes, it does have some original codes in it, but this is where this chart comes from. A lot of it is based on new codes. So we want to look at that and compare it to the original writings. Okay, so in the number one location of that map, it says the sealing message of the 144,000 period begins in 1929 and 1930, and that's according to 2 Answer, page 32 and 34. And of course, we know this is very correct. The message came to us through Brother Houteff in 1929, 1930, and this was the sealing message. Now, we want to make sure that we know for a fact that not necessarily 1929, 1930 were the angels going through the church and marking the 144,000. Of course, almost every one of those are gone now, and the exception being maybe Sister Bonnie Smith. But so we want to make sure that it's understood. 1929, 1930 was the sealing message came at that time. the sealing message. And of course, that was present truth from then on, and they had to know about the sealing message because it was present truth in order to be sealed, to be brought up as those with. Okay, let's go to number 2. After the sealing of 144,000, there's an intervening period before Ezekiel 9. Of course, they use the new codes, volume 13, number 3, page 10, volume 13, 11, number 7, page 8. Of course, this is false. Okay, let's break this down and show you why it's false. Okay, so for example, their new code reference they find, you notice here that the angels are not told, he's speaking of Revelation 7, 1-4. You notice here that the angels are not told to hold the winds until Ezekiel 9 has all been fulfilled. But are not told to hold the winds until Ezekiel 9 have all been fulfilled, but until the servants of God are sealed. Therefore, if there is any intervening time between the close of the sealing and the slaughter of Ezekiel 9, there is a possibility that the winds could start blowing during that time. So here we see that this is indeed what that chart is basing on, is this quote right here, saying that there's a possibility the winds could blow and that there could be an intervening time. And let's compare that with the original code. So let's look at the original code. And the very powerful one is found in track 1, page 38-39. After the sighing and crying ones were marked, which is not to be understood as being consummated in its entirety worldwide before, let me repeat that, before the slain follows anywhere. The slaughter completed and the matter reported, the Lord spake unto the man clothed with linen and said, Go in between the wheels, even under the cherub, and fill thine hand with coals of fire from beneath the cherubs, and scatter them over the city. Ezekiel 10:2, of course, that's again, it's track 1, page 38-39. Brethren, you may want to just have this as one of those go-to references, because this is very, very powerful. Because we see here clearly that the 144,000th person that will get sealed is not going to be completed before Ezekiel 9. Very, very powerful, very, very clear. We have to understand that that sealing of the 144,000 happens at the time of the slaying, not before. You see, if we go back and remember that last reference of the new code, what do we have? We have new code telling us one thing, and the original code saying something else. This is why the believers in the original codes cannot accept the new codes as inspired. We very much know that they were tainted with Sister Houteff and her meddling and her adding and subtracting and all these things, brethren. So it's best to leave the confusion off to the side, treat it as historical writings, not as inspired writings, and we'll be very safe this way. Okay, so let's go back here again and look at that chart that we just discussed. So you can see here that they have the timeline, which is correct, and then they go right here, which is quite a good distance prior to the Ezekiel 9, the slaughter of Ezekiel 9 right here. So what they do is they say there's a closing of the sealing, of which these events happen prior to the Ezekiel 9 church judgment. Well, we already discovered that this close of sealing is not to be understood until the slaying begins, and not to be completed until the slaying begins right here. That's what clearly the original code tells us. So we want to point that out, that right here is a glaring error in this chart. Okay, so in the Assyrian Confederacy, we do think that is correct. It does happen prior, but this subject is not completely understood and has several interpretive viewpoints, but appears to take place before Ezekiel 9. So what we mean by that is there is a lot of discussion, and you know, each party brings different viewpoints of how the Confederacy is going to go down and all this, so it's a very deep subject, but we do think that the timeline is correct. It does happen prior to the Ezekiel 9. Number 4, the gigantic war of Zechariah 14, 1-2 is correct. It is placed before Ezekiel 9. It does appear to take place because track 14, page 22, very clearly tells us, while the powers of the earth are engulfed in a gigantic war, the wicked in the church shall be cut off, no more to pass through her. Another go-to reference, brethren, that you may want to keep for your references, because here we see that it says, while the powers of the earth are engulfed in a gigantic war. So it doesn't say right at the beginning or right after, it says while. So we know that this war is going to start prior to the final sealing of that 144,000th person in the church. But we don't know how long. I mean, this war could start, be drawn out a month or two, maybe more. Or it could be a fast, powerful atomic bomb, nuclear war type situation where it would only last a week or maybe even not that long. But I believe because Ezekiel 9 happens, we know it's 7 days, according to the message, that this war has to happen at least, longer than that. So that's how we understand number 4. Number 5, oppose the Confederacy. Again, it's correct. It does appear to be before Ezekiel 9. 42 months is correct. However, now we want to make sure we understand this. We have no light on the specifics of this 42 months and what it will entail. Brother Houteff did not expound. Now, the reason we bring that up is there's certain present truth believers amongst us. One that even sends out tracts on a semi-regular basis explaining exactly what the 42 months are. Okay, so we have to be very, very careful, brethren. All we know is it happens prior to Ezekiel 9, when the Gentiles are going to be removed from there. But we don't know when it started. We don't know the specifics of what's entailed on this. Brother Houteff was going to give an answer to Sister Houteff in the hospital, according to a couple of the old-time pioneer reports, but he died that night. So he did not tell Sister Houteff the interpretation of the 42-month prophecy in the antitype. So we have to leave it there. Now, as far as the 42 months, it's very limited what the rod does say in the original codes. And you can read this at your leisure, but this one is found in track 5, page 111 to 112. It's somewhat clear, but it doesn't give us real close specifics. All right, now we come to number 7 in their timeline, and we emphasize a big error. This is where we have to take a very, very close look at what's going on here. All right, let's look at number 7. Here we see number 7. We notice Jacob's time of trouble, solemn assembly, cry day and night for deliverance. And you see that? They place it before Ezekiel 9. Big error, brethren. And we're going to go over that right now. Now, why is it error? Well, we have to remember that our fundamental beliefs, let's stop there for a minute. Fundamental beliefs in any religion is their core values. This is what is a summary of what we stand upon. Okay, so this is not to be trifled with. And unfortunately, the new code proclaimers do trifle with this and say, no, it's not really true. Don't believe it because we got so much other new code stuff that counters it and brings us different ideas. And so we got to be very careful here, brethren, because if you read this from 4 to 7, it definitely shows, and we'll take our highlighter here, number 4, Ezekiel 9, and notice we highlighted important words that immediately thereafter. And thereafter what? Well, we got number 4, Ezekiel 9. The angels let loose the 4 winds, whereupon ensues the time of trouble, and Michael standing up to deliver from it, all whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life, Daniel 12:1. And then again it has number 6. that the angels let loose the four winds to blow over the four corners of the earth does not anticipate a world war, but rather a worldwide decree enforced throughout Babylon by the image beast, and that then no one may buy or sell save he who worships the image. Revelation 13:15-17. Now notice this. That subsequently, you see that again? In other words, these are chronological. And if we say that subsequently, it means these here. In other words, number 7 comes after 4, 5, 6, and 7. The time of Jacob's trouble, Jeremiah 37, for the 144,000, the sons of Jacob, logically develops on their way home. Genesis 32:1 and 24, to the land of their fathers. Ezekiel 36:28, 37:21, 25. Fundamental beliefs, page 12 and 13. So it's very, very important, brethren, that we understand that Jacob's time of trouble is after Ezekiel 9, according to our fundamental beliefs. And you can see more evidence that this is a sequence. Number 10, that with this sequence of events will ensure the loud cry of the angel that lightens the earth with his glory. Revelation 18:1. So it's very, very powerful, brethren, and very much a preponderance of evidence here that this is a sequential order. And we must abide by that, because why? Brother Houteff decided, under inspiration, to make this fundamental to what we believe in. That's what fundamental beliefs are. It's very basic, very fundamental. It's a pillar of how we stand upon end-time events. Okay, so underneath that Jacob's time of trouble, they have the solemn assembly. And we do want to make a note of the solemn assembly. It's kind of similar to the Assyrian Confederacy. Not a lot of clarity in this solemn assembly understanding. We do have from the message 3 quotes that go into it. But we've done a study on the solemn assembly, and it is very, very difficult to get a clarity on this subject. So anybody from any of the organizations that comes and says, oh, we have to have everybody meet at our organization grounds before Ezekiel 9, so get ready, you're going to have to come on over. No, 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 brother. We're not told that. If you do this study on this, again, we have on our website, Hear Ye the Rod, a good study on the solemn assembly. And from what we understand, and from those quotes, it really looks like a solemn assembly, probably to a great degree happened in Brother Houteff's time, as opposed to a future time. But anyway, these are the references that you can study on your own to get a little more light on this. Okay, so the cry day and night for deliverance is based on early writings, page 37. And you can read this at your leisure. But we want to just say that, again, this quote, early writings, must be interpreted how the rod interprets it. In other words, when we read something from Ellen White, she did not have the light on the kingdom. Therefore, Brother Houteff took all the references from the Spirit of Prophecy that needed to be clarified. And this is what he did with early writings, page 37. And this is found on Shepherd's Rod Tract, page 36. And you can clearly see that Brother Houteff places early writings after Ezekiel 9. In other words, Jacob's time of trouble is happening, and what is the saints doing? They're crying day and night for deliverance. And this is the timeline after Ezekiel 9. So we remember in the new code chart we've been looking at, they place this before Ezekiel 9. There's a lot of trouble with that, brother. Number one, Jacob isn't on his way home. If it's before Ezekiel 9, they're still stuck, not free yet, and they're stuck in their homelands. This doesn't even go according to type. Jacob was on his way traveling when he experienced Jacob's time of trouble. So there's a lot of holes in this idea of putting cry day and night for deliverance before Ezekiel 9. And there's another reference there that's found from the rod about early writings, page 37. And that we want to make sure is understood was from 1 SR, page 62, and made prior to the kingdom knowledge. And so at that time, with his limited light, he could not place that on the saints going home to the kingdom, the land of Israel. So he had to place it in the light he had, which was an application to the church. So this is something to keep in mind. Again, when we see many references made from the rod prior to the knowledge of the kingdom, we have to take that in context, that that was the light shining then. Okay, so he had more light after the light of the kingdom. And it's very important to remember that. Okay, so we just finished up a little discussion here of this here. So we see that cry day and night is false. Jacob's time of trouble is false. Solemn assembly, we don't really know much as far as placement goes, so we can't say for sure that that's a false area there. But we do know this time of trouble and cry day and night is placed in the wrong place. And okay, let's continue. Okay, so let's go over a summary here of what we've studied today. The well-circulated chart of events is not accurate in events prior to Ezekiel 9. There will be no, and we want to repeat, no intervening time after the saints get sealed. They will not cry out day and night before Ezekiel 9, but after, on their way home, and experiences Jacob's time of trouble. The rest of the chart after Ezekiel 9 is correct. Of course, we always want to study to show ourselves approved, and that's what we've done here with this timeline. We have to dissect it and look at it closely. I want to go back real quick to that chart. So when we see here 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 at this mark, this is all correct. The chart here is correct. And then again over here, the chart is correct. Now, we don't know about 18 so much. This part we haven't studied as much, whether this is correct or whether it should be right here at Ezekiel 9. I'm not real sure on this part here. But again, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, these are all correct. So the problem with this new code chart is basically in this area right here. This is the area that they have a problem with. And we wanted to bring you today this clarity because we need to know the events in the proper timeline so we can be prepared. The new code proponents are teaching that our next big thing is this persecution to come upon the 144,000 and will be called to answer for our faith before authorities. All of that's baloney, brethren. It's not true. It's baloney. So don't you fall for this new code timeline and all its tricks. So we hope you've been blessed, and until next time, may God continue to guide you into all truth, John 16:13. God bless.